क्या ना क्या रिकॉर्डिंग हो रही है. बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम. हाँ, इसको ऑन करो. So what I am going to teach you today is not available anywhere else in the world or in any book or any lecture, and it is also very important. Basically what I want to say is everything that you have been taught is wrong, and there is a right which can be determined. There are reasons why the existing theory of economics as developed by the West is wrong, and I won't have time to go into these reasons, but I have discussed those reasons in other places. So what this means is that wa alaikum assalam, that you see, there is a impression that the West has made a lot of progress, and if we want to learn economics, then we are 100 years behind them, and first we must follow them for 100 years, and then we can maybe contribute something. So this is completely wrong, because everything that they are currently teaching is wrong, so it's very easy to make a contribution. So I am here not because I expect great things from you, and that you are all PhD students and you can make tremendous contributions, because nothing is known. To give you just one very simple example. Suppose I was to ask you that we want to find out about how people spend their money on purchases, and suppose that you had not been brainwashed by studying micro, then you and I will be, my mother, she buys some amount of meat, some tomatoes, some potatoes. Let me go and ask her how she makes up the budget, and you could go and ask, and you can ask other people and find out something about how much money is spent on food, how much money is spent on rent, and how do people make this thing. And it's not easy, but there is work involved, but you would come up with some theory. You would go and gather data and you find something. Now, but because you have been brainwashed, you would say, okay, let's find out the utility function. And, if some old lady, she is purchasing tomatoes, then someone who has been trained by Samuelson, he will say, oh, look, what she is doing, she is calculating the first order derivatives. Now she is forming a system of simultaneous equations. Now she is solving these, and she is coming up with the optimal amount of tomatoes to purchase. This is 2.25 ounces. And of course, if she makes a mistake in adding up the money that she has got, this wouldn't bother you. So, what is this? This is nonsense. Of course she is not doing that. So, because you have been brainwashed into believing things which are completely wrong, you are saying that, okay, because Samuelson has said it and he is a Nobel Prize winner, so I will reject the evidence of my senses. I will reject my experience. I will reject what I see every day, and I will believe in Amanna Saddaqna, what Samuelson says must be right, what I see with my eyes, what I experience with my heart, everything is wrong and Samuelson is right. So this is the kind of effect that brainwashing has. So what I'm going to try to teach you is macro, but and this is a very important subject. How our country is being run is according to these false theories. So if you learn the right theories and learn how to apply them and use them, you can change the world. So it's a very big game that we are playing, and very serious consequences from learning the truth. The truth is very powerful, but the falsehood also has very powerful weapons. It's kind of like this story of Musa alayhi salam, that when the magicians spread their snakes. There were thousands of them, and Musa alayhi salam was scared. Oh, how can I overcome this? They are so many. But when he cast the one stick of Iman, it swallowed all the lies. So the same is true today, that if you have the most difficult thing, the first step is to have confidence, which is what we have lost. You see, we have, as the Ummah has suffered defeat after defeat for 300 years, so they've been discouraged and demoralized, and they said, no, we can't compete, we can't think. I know from personal experience, I have taught statistics classes. I was teaching the first basic course. I was teaching about sorting numbers, and then a little while later, just to check if students are following, I asked student a question. So he didn't answer. I said that, what's the matter? You didn't understand? He said, sir, these things are from Western countries. They have a lot of advantages, and we can't understand these things. They are very highly advanced people. So from the beginning, the student has switched off his brain, and he was just sitting there with the understanding that I can't possibly understand. And this is part of the work of the magicians. You see, if you are told that in order to understand macroeconomics, you have to understand Romer, you have to understand differential equations, and you have to understand this and that, it's just nonsense. There's nothing to do with differential equations. Have nothing to do with macroeconomics. Macroeconomics is about things that you and I can understand, provided that we have the confidence. But when you look at these differential equations, you say, oh, this is beyond my capacity, so let's ask the Western experts how to run our economy. So this is part of the magic, so that you don't think about your own problems and you don't learn how to solve them. So you have to stand up against this magic, but you can't do it just by standing. You have to have the knowledge to be able to. If we say, okay, microeconomic theory is wrong, you can't say, okay, it's wrong because I say so. You have to go and find out what actually people do, and you have to study and work and research and do hard work. But you can get the results. So it's not that you can get something for nothing. You have to work very hard. But that work is possible for you. It is not that you are black people and your brains are inferior and therefore you cannot think. In fact, the truth is easy to understand. The truth about economics, it's not easy in the sense that it's easy to understand in the sense that it's about things which we can all understand. It's not about abstract differential equations and statics and total differentials and all of those things. They have nothing to do with economics. Economics is about some people earn money, some people don't earn money, some are unemployed, some are employed. All of these things we understand, we know. So that's what I'm trying to teach you. Okay. So the first concept that I will tell you is that social science theories can only be understood within their historical context. If you want to understand Say's law, it is not that you have to understand the formula for the Say's law. You have to understand who was Say and why did he say what he said. What was the historical problem that he was facing and how did he try to solve this problem? If you want to understand Keynesian economics, you have to go and look at the history. What was happening in the Great Depression? What was the puzzle that was posed by the Great Depression? Please do not take notes, because this is one of the things that actually it's a bad habit. I am trying to teach you something. You have to understand it. You have to pay attention to what I am saying. Taking notes is part of is like saying that this I can't possibly understand, so let me just write down something and I will try to figure out what was said later on. It will never happen. If you cannot understand what I say now, you will never be able to understand from your notes. So you have to pay attention, try to listen to what I am saying, and be alive in this class. Not that you have abandoned the idea of trying to understand from the beginning, and so you will study your notes later to understand. It's impossible, you won't. And besides, this lecture is being taped, so you can listen to it again if you miss something. So there's no need of notes, it's just useless. So now, what is social science? Social science is an attempt to understand our experience. What is going on in the world around us? So we make theories to understand why is Pakistan having inflation, why is there unemployment, what should we do for monetary policy, what should we do for fiscal policy. All of these things we have to do, but how do we do them? For that we need theories. Now, the very strange thing is that in the West, I'm going to tell you something very surprising. Listen very carefully. In the West, there was a battle between Christianity and science. As you know, Galileo and all of those things. So, what happened in that battle was that science won and religion lost. As a result, science became the religion of the West. They believe in science. And so they said the only knowledge is scientific knowledge. There is no other kind of knowledge. Now this is completely false. I mean, actually, most of the knowledge that we have, what does it mean to be a human being? What is courage? What is cowardice? What is honesty? What is integrity? What is lies? And what is bad character? What is corruption? These things cannot be handled by science because they have to do with human feelings and emotions and personalities and character. And science is completely incapable of dealing with that because science deals with things which are repeated patterns in nature. There are laws. The moon goes around the earth and it cannot prevent itself. It cannot choose. Anybody who has the possibility of choice, I can choose to be good and I can choose to do bad. This is impossible for science to predict. As you know, there is a famous hadith that one man, he committed 100 murders and then he made tawbah and decided to be good. Now if you run any regression on what's been happening, you will find that no, he cannot do that because all of the data lies on one direction. There is no possibility that there will be change like that. And similarly, somebody who has been pious all his life, he can make a mistake and he can go astray. So, the free will is something which science cannot handle. Because science says that if X and Y always happens, then the result will be the same as has always happened in the past. So basically, social science is not subject to laws. Because human beings are free. We can change. If you look at history, every kind of things have happened. If you look at what happened in the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Arab tribes were the most ignorant people on the planet. They were the most backwards. But with the coming of Islam, they became the leaders of the world for 1,000 years. How did that happen? There was no precedent in history before or after. We need to learn what was it that happened. We even as Muslims, we don't know. Today, the sad thing is that the West is teaching us about Rostow's model. You know what Rostow's 7 stages are? Basically what he did was he looked at the 300 years of progress of England and he just said, okay, they had coal, they had this, they had that. So these are the 7 stages. So everybody must follow the same 300 years path in order to get developed because England is developed and that's the word it's so idiotic. Now, so the Muslims are studying the Rostow 300-year model and they are not studying what happened in the 30 years in which Muslims came from nothing and became rulers of half of the world. So how did that happen? Should we study that? No, Muslims are not studying that. Why? Because they are too impressed by the West. So, social science is attempt to understand our history, and it can only be made sense of in the particular. You see, what I was trying to say was that science and religion had a fight in the West. It didn't happen in our culture, by the way, in Islam. So science is about the natural world, and religion is about human beings. And the two, they don't have any match. Should you be truthful? Science cannot give you an answer. Should you murder innocents? Science has nothing to say about it. And that's why, because the West started to believe in science, so the people who were the graduates, PhDs from Yale, they went into Vietnam and they committed murder of innocents, and they are still doing it. They have no concept of what it means to be a human being. The ambassador of USA, Madeleine Albright, she was asked on public TV that, America's policies have led to the death of 500,000 children in Iraq. So do you think it's worth it? He said, well, it's a difficult question, but yes, I think it's worth it. So, if I say, okay, here is a baby, you murder it, I'll give you $1 million. Okay, it's worth it. So 500,000 babies she is willing to murder for the sake of achieving policy, and the thing is that, of course, there are people like that, but she can state it on public TV in the front of everybody. Nobody thinks that there's something strange about this. And this is what they are doing. So, the humanities, what it means to be a human being, is something which science cannot answer. Now, because in the West, they said science is the only knowledge, there is nothing else. So they said our study of human beings, this should also be a science. So they started teaching you Keynesian economics and everything else that you have studied as universal laws which are applicable to all societies. You are just using mathematics formulas, and you are being taught that this mathematical formula applies to Pakistan, it applies to India, it applies to China, it applies in the 18th century, it applies in the 21st century, it applies in Latin America, because science is like that. But this is completely false, obviously wrong. The same theory cannot be used to study economics in Pakistan as it can in England, France and India. Everything has to be studied within their own historical context. So, social science cannot be science. It's just a wrong name. Even the word social science is wrong, because when you study human beings, you have to be particular. What is true about us, this society in Pakistan in 2014, is not this what was true about it in 1970. Even in Pakistan, tremendous amount of social change has taken place. So you have to study, and same is true of economics. What are the economic possibilities for Pakistan today are very different from what they were in 1970, and everything. So, in order to study economics, you have to take into account the historical context. This is something which nobody is currently doing. So this is not being taught in Harvard, and that is why you can beat them easily at their game. Because if you study and say, okay, here's your mathematical formula, but it doesn't apply, and here I can show you. If you have the knowledge if you have the data and the facts and the statistics, you can easily disprove their theories. So one of the things that I was taught is that things are facts or they are not. This is called binary logic. Either something is true or it's false. If it's true, it's good. If it's false, it's no good. But social science theories are not like that. They are not subject to binary logic. There are so many wrong theories. There are, as you know, 7 different schools of macroeconomic thought, even more. Not all of them can be right. So, is it the problem. This is what we have been told. This is what I was trained to believe, because I was trained in the West. That one of these theories is right, that's the one we have to find, all others are wrong. This is not true. This is not how we can understand social science, because one can say that all theories are wrong. So how do we understand theory? Well, basically, human beings face a problem. We have unemployment. What should we do? We don't know. So we have to generate some theory about unemployment, that this is what causes unemployment. In the light of this theory, then we take some action. Now, sometimes the action works, sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't necessarily mean that the theory is wrong, but to understand that theory, we have to understand what was the problem that I was facing, how was I trying to solve it. Most often, the theory that is proposed is wrong. Most often it is wrong. But doesn't mean it's useless. It means that you have to see, okay, human beings are trying to solve this problem, they formulated this theory. In the light of this theory, they took some actions. So this theory is important, even if it is false. Why is it important? Because it explains, why did these people act in this way? Why did America attack Iraq when actually they have, apart from the barbaric act of destroying millions of lives, it hasn't really paid off very well. They spent trillions of dollars, they bankrupted their economy. Why? Because they had a theory about the world. They thought that we can overcome, we can win, we can impose our rules, we can take control of oil. These were the theories that they had. So we have to understand, where did these theories come from? In order to understand how they acted. Today, Pakistani planners and economists are making a lot of plans. We should do this, that and the other. All of these plans are based on certain theories that they have about the world. These theories are wrong. Because of that, they are making wrong plans and they are making wrong decisions about what we should do to change things in Pakistan. So, in order to make the right plans, we need to understand what these false theories are and how we can change them in order to make the right plan. So, just because a theory is wrong doesn't mean it's useless. Means that you have to understand, why did people come to this conclusion, so that you can explain to them that, look, from the data you deduce this theory, but this theory is wrong. From the same data you can come to the other theory which is better and more correct. So, theories are not understood as being true or false. They are understood as being the response within history to some circumstances. And again, this is something which is currently not being taught at any university in the world, because the idea is that according to the currently dominant ideas about social science, this is what I am saying is completely wrong. In the sense that if I have a theory which depends on the historical circumstances, then it cannot be science. Because science has to be universal and invariant. So I am saying that in Pakistan people did this, that and the other, and it was due to the historical circumstances, then it's just a description, it's not science. And if it's not science, then it's useless. So what I am saying is exactly opposite of what is currently being taught in all universities all over the world. So, one very important concept that is used is a philosophical concept called power knowledge. And basically the idea is that the powerful people propagate knowledge in order to further their interests. For example, the idea that capitalism is a very good system, when in fact what happens when you allow free market to rule, as has happened for the past 30 years in the USA, is that all of the wealth concentrates in the hands of the extremely wealthy. And now there has been thousands of studies which prove that the top 0.1% of the population in the USA has more wealth than the bottom 90%. And this is a situation which is new. I mean, I don't have the graph here, but basically over the past 30 years, the share of the top 0.1% has been increasing. Why? Because Keynesian economics were rejected in the 1980s and the Reagan-Thatcher revolution came, and from that time on, the free market philosophy has become more and more powerful and dominant. Why did that happen? For this you have to study history. There is a very important book called The Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein. Has anybody read it here? Then you don't know any economics. Actually, I say that after I read that book, that I learned more economics from that book than I did from my PhD in Stanford, because in the PhD all I learned was math. In that book it explained what the theories were and why they were propagated, and what happened in Argentina and what happened in Russia and what happened in Chile and in many other places. What were the main economic events in the 20th century? You don't know. You have not been taught. Why haven't you taught? How can you be an economist and you not know what happened in the 20th century? What were the big events? How did the miracle economies of East Asia achieve their miracle? They transformed from rural agricultural economies like Pakistan to top-notch industry. How did it happen? You don't know. You haven't been taught. It's not part of economics because it's a historical event. It's not science. Just last year, Eugene Fama, whose theory of rational expectation is so ridiculous that it's not even worth laughing. It's completely ridiculous. I don't know what. He got a Nobel Prize. These Korean economists who were responsible for creating an economic miracle which has been acknowledged, the World Bank wrote a book called The Economic. No one has got any Nobel Prize. How did they do it? They just nobody knows. This is the concept that I'm trying to tell you of power knowledge. That what is knowledge, what is celebrated, is according to the interests of power. But this is not completely true. It is true that the powerful people have a lot of influence in spreading theories, but that's not the only thing which matters. There are many other things. So, and basically we are here for a battle. We have been put on this planet to battle for the truth, and we know that the falsehood will be trying its own very hard, and they have lots of power and lots of weapons. So, but truth is also a very powerful weapon. I am telling you this, all of these things, which contradict what you have been studying for years. But you believe me, because I am explaining you something which is very simple and truth. It's hard to deny. So, just one dose of truth can overcome years of false propaganda. So truth is very powerful, but it is not prevailing today. Today, the falsehood is prevailing. So you have a very important mission, a role. If you go to Qaid-e-Azam and you try to tell what I am telling, you will not succeed. You tell the students at Qaid-e-Azam economics, what I am telling you today, they will not believe you. And you will not be able to explain it in the same way that I am explaining it to you, because I have spent years studying this. So what is conveying to you here is not really all of the arguments. What is conveying to you here is the feeling in my heart, that you understand that I am saying something with seriousness, with intention, with sincerity, and that is what convinces you. It is not the argument that I am making. And you will not be able to make the same argument with the same level of. So then, this is the job. Alright, so I don't know what happened. Okay, so Now you see, I am saying that if we want to understand social science, we have to understand human beings, societies, how people behave, how they change. And actually, we human beings are well equipped with the skills that are needed to understand these things. We have skills in pattern recognition. We can understand very complicated emotions. We can understand stories which are very deep and sophisticated. Because this is what we are built for. This is what we spend our lives doing. And this is what is needed to understand history. And that is what is needed, understanding of history, to understand economics and social science and all of these subjects. So we are built, we have the talent, we have the capabilities to understand social science. But, you see, the enemies of truth have told you, have brainwashed you into thinking that if you want to understand history, you have to understand math, you have to understand tensor calculus, you have to understand differential equations, comparative statics, total differentials, all of this nonsense. And these things we are not well equipped to do. Human beings don't have good talent at learning mathematics. Some of them can, some of them can't. But by putting this idea that is what we need, it has made you incapable of, it has created a defeatist mentality. You read your macro text, Romer, etc. You say, this is really beyond my understanding. So let the experts tell us what to do with our economy. I can't understand it. I'm just So there is loss of self-confidence due to wrong methodology used in social sciences. So it is very important that we have some confidence in ourselves in order to innovate. But also, there is a balance. You can't say become confident and know nothing. This also happens. So what you need is to have balance the confidence and the skills that you have. There was in America they teach you confidence. So there was a very interesting survey done a few years ago. They took a math test in a lot of countries and they evaluated the performance of different groups. And then they asked, how well do you think you did in this math test? So very interestingly, the people in the US said, we did fantastic. And they had the worst performance in the whole world. There were just 16, 20 countries involved. The Japanese, they had the best performance. And they said, we did very badly. So the level of confidence and the level of skills are not necessarily matched. So today, what is happening is that there is ignorance, complete jahliya, which is masquerading as knowledge, which pretends to be knowledge, and asks that everybody should make sajda. And unfortunately, most of the Muslims have accepted this, and they are making sajda to these false gods. Keynes, he had some good ideas, but basically his theory is wrong. But some of it is right. Friedman is completely wrong, and Lucas, so bad. So, unbelievably bad things, unbelievably wrong things are being given respect when they should be laughed at. If somebody says, look, this old lady is differentiating, calculating first order condition, you should laugh. You don't need to discuss or argue. Similarly, some of these theories, Lucas, rational expectation, you only need to laugh. It's not worth this serious discussion. Alright, so when we study history, we find some very interesting things which are not known to economists. What happened was something which is called the Great Transformation by one historian of the West, Karl Polanyi. Now today actually we are faced with a difficult problem, that if we just go to the truth, we don't need to study European history. But unfortunately, because today the dominant knowledge is European knowledge, then we need to study European history in order to understand the basis for this knowledge and in order to attack and dispute with it. It is essential to understand European history, because basically European social science is a product of Europeans trying to understand their own experience. So if you want to understand European social science, you have to understand the European experience. Otherwise, all of it is meaningless. Now, actually, in principle, there is no need. We can just throw it all in the garbage can and we start with looking at the Pakistan and looking at the problems we face and trying to solve it on our own, without any reference to anything of European history, because it's not really relevant for us. Unfortunately, we cannot do that. Why? Because all of our elite have been brainwashed in the West. So now, in order to explain to them what to do, you have to explain that, look, you have been brainwashed like this, and you need to change this way of thinking. And we can't even push a very radical agenda, because they won't change so quickly. So you have to make small changes. That, okay, this thing is a little bit wrong. Why don't we fix that? And hopefully, slowly, we might be able to get big changes. So, what happened in the West, this is something that you need to understand, very important. I have given a summary of this in Rise and Fall of the Market Economy. That's the name of my article. Basically, before the takeover of markets, there was something which is called a paternalistic and regulatory economy. This is the terminology of Karl Polanyi, who is a historian of Europe. And so, in a paternalistic which is what happened before the emergence of capitalism. So what was the world like? Well, basically it consisted of self-sufficient communities. Groups of people like, if you think about a village, they produce their own food and everything. There's only a small amount of trade that is needed. And the ideal is being self-sufficient. That is, in a small group, you should take care of all your needs to the extent possible. So if there is trade happens only in luxury items, not basic needs. You don't want to be buying food from others, because suppose they don't have to sell, or suppose you don't have the money to pay, what will happen? It's much better to be self-sufficient. In fact, in India, after the British takeover, there were many famines in which lots of people starved, because the economy was switched from self-sufficient economy to those which were matching to Adam Smith's theory, and you produce your comparative advantage, so you should produce only cotton or something or the other, which is not self-sufficient. So you will sell your cotton and you will get the food. That's the theory. But what happened was that sometimes the cotton crop would fail, and sometimes the prices would not be fair, and so there would be large-scale famine. People would die of hunger. So self-sufficiency is a good thing, but economists will tell you wrong. That's not true. Self-sufficient is bad. Comparative advantage is the theory that you have been taught, brainwashed into believing. So, now mercantilism, you have all been taught it, and it was always a mystery to me. What is mercantilism? What does it mean? Why was it invented as a theory? Why was it abandoned? Well, basically, at the time that mercantilism was being propounded, trade was in luxury items. What mercantilism said was something very simple. We should maximize the gold. Sell your goods, get gold. And don't buy theirs. It's a very simple theory which every individual understands, that if you sell things, you acquire money and you have wealth. And if you buy things, you lose money and you have less wealth. And as long as the trade is in luxury items, this makes a lot of sense. Increase your exports to earn gold and decrease imports to avoid loss of gold. Now, why this was rejected was when comparative advantage came in. Because if you're no longer trading in luxuries, if you're trading in essential items, then this mercantilism no longer makes sense. Now you have to buy, if you want to buy food, then you want to buy food, and if gold goes out, that's fine because you need food. So, anyway, this is just, I'm not trying to explain mercantilism right now. What I'm trying to explain here is that to understand a theory, you must understand its historical context. That's what I'm trying to explain. So, what happened in the Great Transformation was that basically an industrial revolution takes place in England. And again, there are deep and difficult and complex reasons why this happened. But it doesn't have to do the fact that they have more brain power. Very important. That's the myth that has been propagated, that the West has the ability to think scientifically and you are Kala Log and you don't have the ability to think scientifically. This has been propagated that they are honest and industrious and they have integrity and character, and you are corrupt and you are dishonest and you cannot amount to anything. All of this is just baloney, which has been false ideas propagated, which you have come to believe, and these are poisons which are corrupting our hearts. This has to be eliminated. This is one of the steps in self-purification, tazkiyah. To understand that this is not true, this is a false story which has been fed to us. So, the Industrial Revolution led to mass production. Huge amount of goods. In a self-sufficient community, you produce only what you can use. And everybody is self-sufficient. If you produce surplus, it's useless. You can't give it to anybody. You can't buy anything with it. You just throw it away. So, when there became mass production, then there was a necessity to change our ways of thinking. So basically, many changes took place, and one of them was the emergence of the marketplace as being a very important feature of society. Other one was the emergence of money. Money was not so important. Money is still not important. If you go to rural areas where you have self-sufficient economies, people don't know what money is and they don't need it. You can spend your life without knowing, without seeing a rupee. But in the cities, you can't survive without money. Money is God in market societies. Everybody wants to acquire money. The meaning of life is to acquire the maximum amount of money. The person who acquires the largest amount of money, he is the best and the greatest. All the students want to know, what should I study to make the most amount of money? What nonsense. You've just been brainwashed completely. So, the self-sufficient communities were changed into the industrial societies which had mass production. This mass production necessitated a change in economy, in politics, in ideology. Everything changed. That was the great transformation. In all dimensions of thought, people started to think differently in order to accommodate this mass production. So the idea was propagated that markets are good for us, that we should have comparative advantage. Instead of everybody producing everything that they need, which is self-sufficiency, which is the right idea, everybody should specialize in their comparative advantage and trade with each other. That is more efficient. You get to a higher curve on the production possibility frontier. Nonsense. But this is what is taught. So, it was the ideology that markets are best for everything was propagated and fed to people, because the opposite was, there was a natural, it was the opposite of what societies believed in up till that point. Societies were paternalistic. They said if somebody cannot earn, then we should provide for him. If somebody is sick, we should take care of him. That is what paternalistic means. I mean, taking care of each other. Whoever is in need, the others, that is what society means. Now, in a market economy, you cannot take care of people because everything is for sale. This is one of the very important things of the market economy. This is what Karl Polanyi's analysis is, which I am summarizing. That you have to buy your laborers. Otherwise, you can't produce. I mean, those factories in England that were necessary for the Industrial Revolution, they had miserable conditions. If you have seen Charles Dickens, they employed all of these children and they would work from morning to night, and they would have its conditions were terrible for all people. So, if you take care of your poor, nobody would work in the factories. So it was necessary to learn not to take care of your poor. And it was necessary to learn how not to have sympathy in your heart for the poor. And that was taught. And I can find you for quotes, and I have done so, in how people were trained not to worry too much about poverty. It was said that, the poor are necessary for the economy to function. If we take care of the poor, then everybody will be poor. Malthus was the first such theory. So, so these ideas were invented that the market is superior, market is efficient, market produces good outcomes, the invisible hand, all of these bogus theories, to overcome the natural theories. Now, actually, you see, what Polanyi says, something very important, that markets did not come by a natural evolutionary process. They came by a revolution. They crushed existing society, they crushed existing values, and they became dominant by a revolutionary process, not by an evolutionary process. The implication is that we, in order to avoid the problems that are being faced currently by capitalism, we need a revolution. We cannot do it by minor changes. So, and there is what I want to explain is that there is a dramatic conflict between market and society. So, for example, suppose that my mother cooks a great meal for me. I say, "Oh, Mom, you have done this is so fantastic. How much can I pay you for this?" That is the conflict between market and society. Today, in California, some child filed a suit against his father that their parenting was very bad, and so they must pay me this much in compensation. This is what happens in a market economy. So there is a revolution that is required. And today, so there is an ideological war that took place in which markets came to dominate And today everything is for sale, which was not previously. The things that you can buy are just amazing. You can buy space in a womb, for example, in America. So, I have an article on it which lists much more. Anyway, what I'm saying is that there is currently this ideological war is going on, and we are losing very badly because the enemy has a huge amount of power. They have the internet, they have the movies, they have the TV, they have the advertisements, and we have the truth. Truth is very weak. I said it was very powerful, but so it's up to you to change things. It can be done, but it's difficult. But Allah Ta'ala has done this. I mean, this is the way of Allah, that He sends one person and few people with no arms to fight the army of Iran because He wants to show His power. So, even though you are few and we have nothing in comparison, and the enemy has huge amounts of resources and billions and trillions of dollars and all of the media, still we can prevail. We need to understand the lessons which the world taught by Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we have to understand and we have to participate. This is what we were sent for, this battle. And this is the situation, that because we have been given a very powerful weapon, so the enemy has given a lot of other things to balance the situation. Otherwise we would win very easily. It would not be any fun. So, you have all been taught Say's law. Say's law says that the production or the supply creates its own demand. Now, what does it mean? It means that when you produce things, it's actually very simple. When something is produced in the marketplace, it requires payment to factors of production. The income that is earned by the factors of production is equal to the value of the object that is produced. You have studied this, right? So, this income is then equivalent to the demand. And people have money and they will use it to buy. So, supply generates its own demand. Now, one thing is that why was Say's law? Now, historical context. See what when overproduction started happening because of Industrial Revolution, there was this general concern that what's going to happen with all of these excess goods that we are producing? Nobody wants them. So that's what basically Say's law is trying to explain, that no, you can overproduce. There cannot be any such thing as overproduction. That is what Say is saying. So it can be understood in its historical context. It's not X plus Y equals Z that is going to explain what is Say's law. It's historical context. Overproduction started to take place and people were worried that what's going to happen to all of this excess. If people were self-sufficient, then Say's law would not be true. I mean, if we say, okay, I am going to, I have my basic needs and I don't want anything else. So, in fact, one of the aspects of the great transformation was the creation of needs. Make people feel that they want more and more. So this, today, one of our enemies is the advertisement that you see, which creates the desire in your heart for having a luxurious lifestyle. Islam doesn't teach us that. Islam teaches us that you should have a simple lifestyle. You should have take care of your basic needs and not try to have luxury. If we did that, the market economy would collapse. Because the market economy is built around overproduction people have to buy all of sorts of things that they don't need. In England, they went and they were making these factories which were producing these surplus goods. So how can they get the workers? Well, what they did was they created sugar plantations in various places where sugar could be planted, and they hooked the workers on sugar. Sugar is not available in England, so it has to be imported. I mean, the sugar cane doesn't grow. So the workers, in order to buy the sugar, they had to produce, and then the produce was sold to the people in the sugar plantations. So it's creating artificial nonsense. The wealth is increasing here and the wealth is increasing there, completely unnecessarily. I mean, before that they were not eating sugar and they were not having these products, and they were perfectly happy. So the market norms. So overproduction is possible if you have self-sufficiency, in contradiction of Say's law. So basically, one of the elements that is important for Say's law is that everyone should be encouraged to be greedy. Havas ko बढ़ाने की ज़रूरत है, ताकि you can sell everything. Money is needed, and actually one of the elements of the Great Transformation was that money became much more important than it used to be. You see, in a self-sufficient society, people take care of each other, and you don't really need money. But in a market economy, you can't live without money. So market norms are that, see, nobody really wants to. Suppose I said that, okay, you are going to be my servant, I will pay you so much money, and you will do whatever I ask you to do. So you will say, no, I don't want to do that. It's a degrading thing. But basically, that's what the labor market is. It's a market in which bodies are sold for money. And all of you have been brainwashed into thinking that you are for sale. After you graduate, you will be put on the block, and people will bid for you. And if somebody sells for 150,000, he'll be happy. Oh, 150,000 salary, I'm making good salary. This is great. I am lucky. The other person is only making 50,000. So, you are going to sell yourself to the highest bidder. You're not going to ask, what am I supposed to do? Is it worthwhile? No. How much money you are going to pay me? I'll do whatever you ask me. I met somebody, expatriate. He was in Pakistan on a mission. I was just talking to him at the airport. He said that, no, I'm here, I'm doing something which is very harmful to Pakistan. I know it. But what can I do? They are paying me good money. And if I didn't do it, somebody else would do it. So this is a man who is for sale to the highest bidder. All of you are like that. You have to change this. You have to understand. This was part of the message of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that you are not for sale. Now, all of the gold in the world is not enough to buy one person. And the Sahaba did that. One of them, well, long story. I don't want to. Okay. So, in a market economy, everything is for sale, including human beings. And people have to be conditioned into this, because this is not natural. People don't accept that, don't buy that. But in a market economy, there is no other way. So ultimately, either you are for sale or you don't survive. So people force themselves to change their ways of thinking. And that's what I was saying. There's a conflict between a natural human economy and a market economy. And the market economy has prevailed. They have conquered. We have lost. Human beings have lost. Now, to return that, to change that, is difficult. So this theory of comparative advantage is part of the game. You specialize, means you become dependent on others. You make mass trade in essentials. Foods are being sold. If you don't get your supply, you starve. There were many disasters, many famines which happened in India, and as usual, the British, after a famine, they would make up a commission which would study why did this famine happen, and they would always report the same thing, that it's because of lack of diversification. You are growing only one crop, you should diversify, and it was never followed. So there was diversification. Indian economy was very well equipped. There were no famines in India prior to the British invasion. In fact, Bengal was the richest area of the planet in terms of food per population, food grains per population. Right after the loss of Sultan Tipu Shahid, there was a famine in which 1/3 of the population of Bengal died because they were so ruthlessly extracting revenue. You are honest and just and fair and equitable rulers. Okay, so so these are all false theories which you have come to believe because of the wrong ways of looking at the economic problems. Basically, you see, many things have been hidden, many things have been taken out of the picture so as to get you to believe false theories. So, for example, you have a nation like Pakistan, and it is said to us that what we should do is sell our food and buy Mercedes or Toyotas, because this is trade. This is our comparative advantage. But there is no mention in your economic books that some things are necessary and some things are luxuries. According to economic theory, the value of a thing is how much it sells for. If you sell food and your people are malnourished and hungry and starving, and you buy helicopters and airplanes, you are doing well, according to economic theory. But if you apply your own brains, which you are not allowed to do because you are black, then you can see that any nation which sells food when its own people are hungry is just idiotic. This is nonsense. What does it mean? So, you have been sold a huge number of false theories. So, in order to prevent you from thinking about the world, so this is what they want. They want to be able to sell, They sell us these programs for $100 or $700, which is just the marginal cost of production is 50 cents of that CD. And they say this is good competition. I was there in Lums when the Secretary of State, George Shultz from USA was there. And at that time, he was just pushing, this was some 10 years ago, that we should reduce tariffs and we should allow exports and we should permit our industries to collapse. At the same time, they had put down, because the US steel industry was troubled, they had banned steel imports into USA and put some barriers against Japanese. So somebody asked him, why are you doing that? He said, they are doing wrong in the USA. They don't follow. Politics gets in the way of correct theories. But you shouldn't let politics get in the way of and you should let your industries collapse. And it is so idiotic. According to the economic theory which you have been taught, and if you are going, and if you study your theories well, you go and advise that, China is going to sell us air conditioners, and there is at half the price that you are making them. So let your all air conditioning industry collapse. Let the people become unemployed because it's not your comparative advantage. Is this really sensible? Just apply your brain instead of... Why can they produce it efficiently? Why can't we produce it efficiently? If they are selling at half price, it should be possible for us to do the same thing. Apply brains instead of instead of and try to improve things instead of saying, okay, let our people be unemployed. They will automatically find jobs in a industry of comparative advantage. Does it happen? It does not happen. If you study history, you find that this is what they did in Russia. In Russia, they told them that why don't you switch to the free market? It will be so great for you. They applied what was called the shock therapy. And as a result, the production in Russia went down by 50%. People who had all been eating starvation and large amount of social catastrophe occurred, and there were a few billionaires also who were created. This is a natural result, very easy to see. If you have the understanding of the real economics, then you can tell what's going to happen as a result of policy. You can tell who is pushing a policy, why he is pushing it, who is going to gain from this, who is going to lose from this. All of this is very easy. It doesn't require rocket science to understand these things. You don't have to. You just look at history and you can understand. Everything is easy. That's what I was saying. That to understand economics is easy. It's within our natural capabilities, provided that we don't go into Samuelson and Romer. If we are not deceived by these things, then we can understand genuine. So one of the theories that you have been sold on believing is the quantity theory of money. This is a beautiful theory. I'm in process of writing it. The quantity theory says that money is a veil. It's covers reality. Just don't think about money. Why? It's very simple. The reasoning of quantity theory: if money is doubled, prices will double. Everything will remain the same. So the level of money that is in the economy is irrelevant. Doesn't have any effect on the real economy. So ignore money. Very good. So quantity theory is actually a veil over money. Money is all important. Everything depends on money. Who has it? Who doesn't have it? So you're just not supposed to look there. There is a movie called The Wizard of Oz. Has anybody seen The Wizard of Oz? Yes. So in it there is this little man who is running a projector, and there's a huge wizard saying, I am the great and powerful Wizard of Oz. And so there's a little girl, she says, yes, I am the meek and humble Dorothy. So her dog runs over to the corner and he pulls the screen from behind which the man is running the projector. And so she says, oh, this man is running the show. He's just so he said, don't look at that man in the corner behind the curtain trying to. So basically this is the thing, that there is a reality which is quite different from the projection. So don't look at that man. Don't look at the money, because that's where all the important and interesting functions of the economy take place. And if you look at that, then you will be able to fight against those wealthy people who are taking a tremendous amount of advantage from your not looking at money. So money is neutral. Prices this is just, all you can do is laugh. It's so ridiculous. So you have been told about the aggregate wealth, the GNP per capita. Again, this is what actually quantity theory of money says. It's the total amount of money which matters. Nonsense. It's not. It's how it is distributed that is all important. Everything matters. This Lucas, he said in 2006 that now the economists have conquered the one great problem, which is of preventing recessions. So in 2007 he was proven wrong. He also said that the most poisonous tendency for economists to study the distribution of income doesn't matter at all. Again, this is what is important is, a distribution is all important. Everything depends on it. And so, for him to say not just that distribution is unimportant, but it's the most poisonous thing. Don't do it. So this is just a question of don't look there where their whole action is. So, money is not neutral. Prices do not adjust. Everything depends on who has the money. If the money goes to the millionaires, they will buy luxury items, the prices of luxury. If the money goes to the poor people, they will invest in other kinds of things. If the money goes to a third party, so there is no neutrality. Everything depends on who has the money, and that's natural. I mean, if actually we took all of the money and we doubled it in proportion, however much I have, it is doubled, and however much you have, then it is possible. I mean, there is that quantity theory might hold. Even there are some issues, but that doesn't happen when the money supplies increase. It doesn't happen that if the money is doubled, then everybody's pockets have twice as much money as they used to. It goes to a certain group of people. Then everything depends on what they do with it. Then there is this famous specie flow mechanism, which is related to the quantity theory. So this is actually the attack against mercantilism. So the idea was that if you export, basically what's the issue? The issue is that if you are exporting more than you are importing. The other way around. Suppose you are importing more. So your gold is flowing out. According to mercantilists, this is bad. But according to Hume, the quantity theory of money, no problem. See, when gold goes out, your money supply will go down, your prices will go down, and so your exports will become more attractive. People will buy your products. Exports, your gold is flowing out, so the prices outside are becoming more expensive because they have more money. Higher money means higher prices. So there is going to be no problem. I mean, it will adjust. So there are two things. First of all, this whole thing is wrong. I mean, this is the major problem in economics. As you are studying it, you never study history. You just study equations. If I say, okay, what's the let's study about the trade between Pakistan and India. So you will draw curves and production possibility frontiers and lines and write equations, and you will not ask what does Pakistan grow, what does India grow, what are they exporting from other countries. These are all the things which matter, but these are particular things which depend on Pakistan. This is not science. So you are not taught these things, even though it's so completely ridiculous that anyone with a little bit of brains could see that this must be wrong. So you have been so deeply conditioned to believe in Western superiority that you say, Amanna sadaqna, I reject the evidence of my eyes, I reject my own thinking and my experience, and I believe in this even though it makes no sense to me at all. As you, all of you at least, I was learning utility theory, I said, this doesn't match anything that I know about. This is not how this is not how I behave, this is not how. But so many brilliant people are saying this, it must be true, what I think must be wrong. So, one of the wrong ideas that is being perpetuated is that, and it's an important wrong idea, is that markets are self-regulating. Means that you don't need to interfere, automatically it will get the best outcome. This is an extremely damaging and dangerous idea, and it's completely wrong. Markets are not self-regulating, they lead to a huge amount of damage. But it is in the interest of some to have you believe otherwise. So this is part of, species flow mechanism is just teaching you that markets are self-regulating. You don't need to interfere. It will automatically, if there's a problem, it will automatically fix itself. And another problem that is the wrong training that you have received also tells you that, okay, just if money doubles, then prices will double. This is a false and lazy way of thinking, because it ignores the causal mechanism. How will it happen? This is what you should ask. You have to go, how is money created? How it will be doubled? Who it will go to? What will they do with it? And how will that lead to an increase in prices? You are just, this is what leads to understanding. And this in economics is gone. So people like you produce theses in which they say, okay, let's take one variable and let's take another variable and let's run a regression. What is the effect of agricultural crop yields in Muzaffarabad on immigration in China? This similar to thesis that I saw, and some so because you have been not told about causality. Anything can affect anything. You just run the regression and find out. Like, how does it happen? This is what you have to ask. This question is not being asked and not being explained. And you can't get to understanding without. So this is another bad thing that you are taught. The quantity theory of money teaches the wrong thing, because it doesn't go into the mechanism. How does it happen? And everything, all of the understanding lies in the mechanism. Okay, I've covered these slides already. So, the system that we are currently living in, the economic system of Pakistan, of USA, of England, this is not something like a tree which has grown up from the seed. It is natural. No, it's not like that. It's been designed to achieve certain ends by certain people. And it has also been subject to many historical accidents, and those have shaped it. So, partly it's conscious design, partly it's historical accidents. But so to understand it, you have to understand. So it is achieving certain goals. Today, the poor countries of the world receive $160 billion in foreign aid. They pay $600 billion in interest payments on debt, which has been already paid many times, but the interest payments keep on going. $1 trillion is transferred from the poor countries to the rich countries in terms of transfer payments by multinationals. So, the theory is that the developing countries should be, the rich countries should help the poor countries to develop, but actually it's the poor countries which are developing the rich countries. But you are not being taught any of this. How come your economics books doesn't say anything like this? Surely this is some important fact to know. There's no mention. What is the debt payment that Pakistan makes? How did we get into this debt? What is the impact of this on our economy? No, those are particular facts, not science. So the current system is not natural, and it is actually a battle. The fact is that we are living under colonialism. We are paying all of the in the 20th century, colonialism was carried out by the means of wars and by the means of takeover and by means of governors who, in the 21st century or post World War II, the colonialism is carried out by entirely different. It has changed very much, but the mechanism is the same. Money is being extracted from the poor countries, the colonized countries, and it's being taken by the richer ones. But now actually the game has changed a lot. It's no longer countries against countries. The US itself, the 90% is a victim of the top elite. They have lost their national identity. So now the game is on a different level. It's no longer US against Pakistan, or it's the 99% of the bottom against the top 1% of the rich. The rich are equally present in Pakistan, and although there are a lot more of them in the US because it's much easier to have a luxurious lifestyle there. But the game has changed. But anyway, since the beginning of time, this world has been a battle place. The battle is a battle of ideas, a battle of good and evil. And this is where we are today also. There is the evil which has always used false theories. If you eat this, you will live forever. And you won't be able to, God will not be able to throw you out of Jannah. So, the false theory led to the first mistake. And similarly, today, we are being attacked by false theories, and the defense is to learn the right theories. Okay. All right. So, basically, macroeconomics began in after the Great Depression. So, in order to understand macroeconomics, we have to understand what the Great Depression was. Who knows what the Great Depression in 1929 was? Yes. 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 Yes, that was one element of the Great Depression. It was actually the triggering cause. The banking sector collapsed. Why did it collapse? You don't know because you haven't been taught. But what was the result? Huh? Yes, what happened was that there was massive unemployment, 25% for many years. So, this was a mystery to the economists. And the first thing we have to, in fact, Ben Bernanke, who was the head of the Federal Reserve, said that understanding the Great Depression is the holy grail of macroeconomics. Holy grail was something that they were searching for in the Crusades. So it's the target, the big vision. So this is the thing, that in order to understand macroeconomics, we have to understand what was the Great Depression, how it took place, and so first thing to understand is, what is the mystery that was posed by the Great Depression? What was the question? Why is the Great Depression a puzzle? Why did Keynes have to rethink economics? Keynes argued before the Great Depression that such a thing could not happen. Just like Keynes also said that now we are in good shape and Great Depressions will not happen anymore because we have a good understanding of how economics works. And then he was proven wrong. So now, what was the puzzle that Keynes was thinking about? What is the puzzle that is posed by the Great Depression? There is a natural puzzle. There are actually two puzzles. One is a natural puzzle, one which we as human beings, you and I, can understand, and one is a theoretical puzzle, which the wrong economic theories that were believed had to resolve. These are two separate puzzles. You are able, currently, because you are trained in economics, you can understand both of these puzzles. So I want to know, hear from you what this puzzle is. Either one, the economic puzzle or the natural puzzle. Before you can solve mystery, you have to know what they are. मैंने देखा था लेकिन.
Yes sir, I will explain Islamic.
हाँ, इस्लामिक यूनिवर्सिटी में थी. अच्छा अच्छा. सही है. तो what is the puzzle? No chocolates for anybody.
Three puzzles which
Yes.
Three puzzles which predominantly Gilchrist tried to answer along with Great Depression. One was the time puzzle that why there is a lag in consumption, and some
Within the Great Depression, there are many puzzles individually as components of the Great Depression, but Great Depression itself is a puzzle. Okay, let me explain. What?
Sales laws, according to sales laws, supply gives its own demand.
Yes.
At that time there was no demand. There was problem from the demand side. Like there was excess supply, but
Of what?
Of labor we can say
Labor. Okay, that is that is.
At a natural rate, it can be like a case that economy always remain at premium, no unemployment,
Yeah.
and only natural rate of unemployment can exist. But 25% unemployment remain for many years, so it is not the natural rate of unemployment. The economy
Yes.
can operate below the natural rate of unemployment.
Yes, that is the economic theory puzzle. The economic theory puzzle is that you have supply and demand of labor.
It's not.
So unemployment cannot exist. Because if there is unemployment, there is lots of people who are willing to work, there is a supply of labor, this supply will create its own demand. And it's not a mystery why it should. According to the economic theory, the price will go down. Do you have a question?
No, I want to explain according to my whatever I have studied. I think that the economic puzzle was the overproduction.
Excuse me?
Economic puzzle was the overproduction in that time.
No, there was no overproduction. The production fell dramatically. The problem was exactly Say's law. The extra laborers should be saying that, okay, give me a smaller wage, and so they should get jobs, and the wage should keep falling until the supply equals the demand, and there should be no unemployment. In fact, even now, the economists who believe in this, and there are those, they say that basically there is no such thing as unemployment. It's only that the person doesn't want to work at the going wage. That's not unemployment. He just doesn't want to work at. So this is wrong. This was proven wrong. A lot of people wanted to work at the going wage. Wage fell, but it did not wipe out unemployment as it was supposed to. So that's the theoretical puzzle. And Keynes' work is about solving that puzzle. Why did supply and demand not work in the labor market? And he has an explanation which you must understand. Kya hua? No, that's not true. That's one of the explanations. But yeah, if the wage doesn't fall, then you could have unemployment. But that's not all that Keynes said. But that is one of the things. But the more important thing to understand for you here is the natural puzzle. The one that doesn't depend on economic theory. Because we don't believe in supply and demand of labor and so on. And that's just nonsense. तुम लोग कितनी देर तक मेरे साथ बर्दाश्त कर सकते हो? अच्छा, तो नेचुरल मिस्ट्री Because the economy was in full employment. There is a period which was called the Roaring Twenties in the USA, where everybody had jobs, there was prosperity, people were, everybody was happy. There was unemployment rate was very low. Factories were going, and then suddenly, in 1929, a few banks failed, and then the stock market crashed, and then huge number of millions of people out of jobs. And what happened? There was no. And if there was an earthquake or there was a war, then we can understand that people will be out of jobs. The factory has been destroyed. But all of the productive capacity is sitting right there. Factories are all there. The people who can work in these factories are there. The people who can buy goods are all there. What happened? And this is the natural mystery. It doesn't have to do with supply and demand and unemployment. It says law. It's just something which. Why did it happen? Millions. And it's not just a small change. A little bit of fluctuation we can understand. But the same system which could function so beautifully well as to give everybody everything they wanted, and people would have jobs, people would be able to buy products, stock market was booming, everything was going good. Why did just naturally there is a system which works. What happened and how can it be changed? Presumably if it was working in the 20s, it can be made to work again. So what do you need to do in order to make it work again? These are the natural questions that are posed by the Great Depression. Is that understood clearly? Okay. So, what is the Keynesian solution to the mystery? You can. Keynes provided, and basically that was Keynesian contribution. He gave an answer as to why there is both demand and then there is supply, and both are available, but it's not happening. The factories are not working, and the people are not. Factories are not working because the people are not demanding the products of the factory. They don't have the money. But if the factories hired the people to produce them, they would have the money to buy the goods. So, according to economic theory, this is the self-regulation that is at issue. Technically, and economics tells us how it would happen, that this problem should have repaired itself. There's a problem, but it should have fixed itself. That's what self-regulation means. And economics tell you how it means, that there's a huge amount of unemployment, so the wage will go down, the factories will hire more laborers, they have their costs of production have gone down, so they will be sell the products at lower prices. When they lower the prices and the people have jobs, they will be able to buy, and this will be continue until all of the excess supply is eliminated and the demand goes back to what it was before the Great Depression. But it didn't happen. So what was the Keynesian solution? How did Keynes resolve this? One of the ideas, what Uzma said just a little while ago, that the wage is fixed. In fact, Keynes did say that the wages are fixed in nominal terms and they cannot go down. But that doesn't really. First of all, it's not true. It's not happened. In the Great Depression, what happened was that the wages went down by about 30%. So, that should have made a big dent in the employment, but it didn't. Unemployment remained very high. Similarly,
Hey,
that's what she said, but we're not. That's the
solution.
That's how we can get out of the depression. But right now we're trying to understand the recession itself. What happened? Why did it happen? So, nominal wages, sticky wages, is not a solution, although it's true that wages are sticky downwards in nominal terms. But that problem can be solved by changes in price. If the prices go up, the real wage will go down, and that should have the same effect. So, who knows what the Keynesian solution is? It's not sticky wages. You don't understand the question. I'm talking about the why there is unemployment. Why doesn't it fix itself? How is it that in 1929 January, economy was booming, and in 1929 December, there were millions of people unemployed? When the system can work at full capacity, the production can take place, and then how come it is not doing so? Not how to solve the problem, fiscal policy, monetary policy, but what was the problem?
Sir, they differentiate between effective demand and notional demand in that context?
Yes, effective demand is the solution, but what does it mean? You have to understand this. You don't have to. This is a part of the, unfortunately, bad training received by students. They learn how to be parrots. They can repeat words without understanding, because they have given up on the idea of understanding.
Produce what people want to buy.
What?
Produce what people want to buy. To effective demand.
Produce what people want to buy. We are asking about, the question is, there's lots of people who are unemployed and lots of factories which are closed. How come? I mean, if the factories were working, the people would be employed and the people would be able to buy the things that the factories are producing. So, why can't they just fix this problem? The factories hire people and they produce, and the people use their income to buy the things that are being produced. It seems like it, huh?
Demand is incomplete in future sense. Demand does not
very advanced concepts. Something simple. What I'm asking is, what did Keynes say? This is really important. Actually, what Keynes said was not exactly correct, but that was the understanding at that time. What? Marginal propensity to consume is less than 1. How does that matter? And what difference does it make? And this is again, I think, parrot disease. You are repeating something, but you don't understand the question. Ji. गवर्नमेंट एक्सपेंडिचर बढ़ाएगी तो क्या होगा? इससे हमें कैसे समझ में आ जाएगा कि why are people out of work? I am trying to understand why are people out of work. पाकिस्तान में इतना अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट क्यों है? क्या?
There is no value to give in return.
क्या मतलब?
सर कि वैल्यू ट्रांसफर हुआ है.
कौन सी वैल्यू? देखो, in 1929 January, all the factories are working, all people have jobs, all of the products that the factories are producing are being sold. In December, millions of people are out of job. So why did this happen? And why cannot it be? Why doesn't it change by itself?
सर अगर देखा जाए कि उन्हें पैसे देने को अब नहीं रह गए थे, तो मीन्स कोई वैल्यू ट्रांसफर हुई है एकदम, जिसकी वजह से ऐसा पॉसिबल नहीं है.
क्या मतलब वैल्यू ट्रांसफर हुई? आई डोंट अंडरस्टैंड. जी
सर, it could be circulation of money, velocity of money. If you decrease velocity of money to some extent, इससे proportion employment का भी जरूरत है. this unemployment doesn't mean कि सारे लोग ही बेरोजगार हो गए. It only just 25% proportion. Maybe it is not relevant from Pakistan में 25% easy हो गया. If you decrease the velocity of money, तो उससे भी unemployment generate होती है. So that would be the cause. And but what is the reason how this was happening? It's a great discussion.
In decade of prosperity, there was overproduction.
Overproduction. What does overproduction mean? I mean, everything that was produced was being purchased, so it cannot be.
So let's take Pakistan 2008.
To say velocity, this is a mystical explanation. Okay? Numbers are.
You can see in Pakistan, all factories are there. In 2008, there was a lot of boom. Still, those companies are still there. But velocity of money was decreased, and that created
velocity of money. Yani, this is how did it decrease? Yani, ये कोई वो जिन है जो अपना इसकी अपनी मर्जी है वो डर जाए तो ठीक है. There must be some reason for thing.
There are so many things. One could be the regulatory effects. You can see that.
Yeah, okay, no, that's what I mean. If the Pakistani government passed a law that the velocity must be slow, so when I take money out of the packet, instead of taking it, instead of going like this, I should go like this. The velocity has decreased.
Governments are also involved in there. Or the Keynes policy is fiscal policy.
All right. Okay, that's enough. Now, what I am going to tell you is what Keynes said. What Keynes said is not correct, but it is an important part of the explanation. And that's what I am trying to say, that false theories are important. We have to understand them in their context. Because what Keynes said was what led to the solutions that were adopted later. So, what Keynes said is that there is demand. The laborers who are so basically we are having a failure of demand and supply. There is demand and there is supply, and they should match at equilibrium, but the demand of the laborers is not an effective demand. What does that mean? It means that this man is unemployed. If he was employed, he would have the income, and then with this income he would go and buy shoes. When he went and bought the shoes, then the shoe factory would say, I see the demand, and more people buy shoes, and there's no more shoes, so they say, I have to increase production. If the factory increased production, it would hire laborers, and those laborers would then earn income, and then they would go and buy other products. And similarly, there would be a chain or reaction in which the demand the demand of the laborers would be expressed in the market. That is what would make it effective. Demand is effective if somebody goes and buys something. So what Keynes said is that there is demand, but it's hidden. The factories don't see it because the laborers, they don't have the money with which to express this demand. And because the factories don't see the demand, they are not producing. If they produced, then they would realize that if they produced the things, then the workers would get wages, and with that wage, they would be able to express their demand. And so, the economy is stuck. It's a sort of a trap, in the sense that the factories think there is no demand, and the workers say that we don't have jobs. So together these two things are balancing each other out and cancelling. And so what do we need to do? We just throw some money at the ground. This is what actually was said, that just throw some money away. So the people will say, okay, now I have the money, let me go and buy something. When they go and buy something, there is demand, so let's expand our production. So the people would go and get jobs, and when they got jobs, so this was, he called it priming the pump. when you have the machine, the water machine, it gets stuck, you have to throw a little bit of water down and then it starts working, and then you don't need to. So that's what he said, that you start it up, and once you start it up, it will go to equilibrium by itself. So that was the monetary policy. Now, problem was that the government can't go around and throw money. What the government does is that it expands the money supply in the economy by a chain mechanism, which is also misleading and wrong. What the government does is expand the money available to banks. Now, if the people borrow this money and use it in some productive way, then the money supply increases. What should happen if you increase the money supply is that people say, oh, let me put up a store and I will borrow this money. This money is, I can borrow. The idea was to lower the interest rate. I can borrow this money at 1%, and if I set up this store, I will be able to earn 2%, so I can make a profit. So let me borrow this money, and then I will put up a store, I will hire a few people and start producing things. And so in principle, monetary policy can get you out of a recession. That's one of the things that Keynes said. He said, however, there are some situations where monetary policy does not work. This is the liquidity trap. So there's lots of money sitting in the bank, and you want to go and basically the issue of increasing money in the economy. Once people have money, they will be able to express their demand, which is not effective currently. So what do? Well, suppose that there's all this money sitting in the bank. Banks want to lend it to you at very low interest rate, but nobody wants to set up a store. Nobody wants to set up a factory. He says that, they say that, look, there are so many factories that are closed down. How can I start a new factory? So nobody wants to borrow. So this money is sitting in the banks, but this doesn't get into the hands of the people. So then the problem is not solved by monetary policy. This happens if your depression is very deep. If the depression is a small, minor one, it can be solved by monetary policy. And indeed, this was the preferred instrument following the Great Depression, when basically from post-World War II, for about 50 years, Keynesian economics became the dominant theory. Even though, as I said, it is wrong. Basically, monetary policy was the favorite tool to be used for fighting recessions and depressions and so on. However, in deep depression, monetary policy does not work. You get into the liquidity trap. Basically, the problem is the zero lower bound on interest. If you can have negative interest rate, I'll loan you this money and I'll pay you some money to borrow it from me. So then you can make it work. But negative interest rates are not possible for various reasons. Actually, having inflation is like having a negative interest rate, because you lend the money, but when it is paid back, its value has gone down because of inflation. So you have to pay back less than you borrowed. That is negative. So if you can induce inflation, and this was also thought, then you can, this is one way to fight recession, monetary policy, because that will give you a negative interest rate. So basically, one of the lessons of Keynes is that interest rate should be low or zero, which corresponds to Islamic ideas. I will make that clearer. In fact, did Sajid tell you something about what I was going to do? Because I have written an article which is called a review of the House of Debt. this. So have you read that? That article is actually I'm covering the background. That article is built on top of understanding Keynes and Friedman and Lucas and all of the things they said, and then showing that how all of these things are wrong and what is the right theory. That is actually a great contribution of Atif Mia and Amir Sufi. Our Pakistanis, black people like us, they can understand things too. And better than Keynes and Lucas. So anyway, ठीक है बस. Let me just, I was just thinking कि मैं कहाँ पे था, just trying to conclude this. That's right. So monetary policy may not work. So what's the solution? Fiscal policy. What's fiscal policy? Basically, he said that the whole idea is to find a bahana to get the money into the hands of the people. You hire people and have them dig ditches and pay them, and then hire a second group to fill up those holes and pay them. And that's basically, once they have the money, they will go into the market and they'll buy things, and that will start up the process. And that's because, or if you don't like that, then basically what is it that you want the private sector to do? We want the private sector to do some investments. You want to launch. So the government can do those. That's what fiscal. The government can start up some projects and hire people and produce some goods. And once you start, this process will have its impact. Basically, the money will get into the hands of the people. The demand will become effective, and then the factories will say, "Oh, there is demand," so they will start producing. Once they start producing, they will hire people. Those people will get money. And so there will be a multiplier effect, and eventually things will go back to equilibrium. That was the Keynesian solution. After that, there is a long history. But basically, to understand economics, you have to understand the history of what happened. And basically, Keynes proposed these ideas in just after the Great Depression, but they were not adopted until after the World War II. And then there was economic experience. And what happened in the 1970s? Why did the monetarist counter-revolution took place? How did it come? All of this history has to be understood. Without knowing this history, you can't understand the economics. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Okay, so that's all for today. What's the next lecture? Next Monday? Friday को नहीं है? अच्छा.
मंडे को क्लास होती है 9 to 11
मंडे को क्लास होती है?
सर मंडे को 9 to 11 क्लास होती है.